arms outstretched into the sky, tears drying on their face. He has been here. Brothers lie in shallow graves, fathers lost without a trace, a nation blind to their disgrace since he's been here. And I see no bravery, no bravery in your eyes anymore. Your sadness.
This has to stop. I think it is a good idea that we all drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop. I don't think it's an extremist thing to do anymore. I still really want to dance around to Pat Benatar and have boyfriends and make comics for my coworkers, but I also want this to stop.
I'm here for other children. I'm here because I care. I'm here because children everywhere are suffering and because 40,000 people die each day from hunger. I'm here because those people are mostly children. We have got to understand that the poor are all around us and we're ignoring them. We have got to understand that these deaths are preventable. We have got to understand that people in third world countries think and care and smile and cry just like us. We have got to understand that they are us. We are them. My dream is to stop hunger by the year 2000. My dream is to give the poor a chance. My dream is to save the 40,000 people who die each day. My dream can and will come true if we all look into the future and see the light that shines there.
Rachel, I find writing to you hard, but not thinking about you impossible. So I don't write. But I do bore my friends at lunch, giving vent to my fear. I'm afraid for you, and I think I have reason to be. But I am also proud of you. Very proud. Rachel's life. Rachel is a creator. Her journey, told in her words and illustrated with her thoughts. Rachel the writer and artist, Rachel the daughter, Rachel the sister, Rachel the granddaughter, Rachel the student, Rachel the co-worker, and Rachel the friend. Letters, emails, journal entries, school papers, and paper napkins saved by Rachel and collected by her mother. This is not my daughter's complete story.
My name is Rachel Corrie. I was born on April 10th, 1979 in Olympia, Washington, to my father and mother, Craig and Cindy Corrie, a brother, Chris, who was about 7, a sister, Sarah, who was 2 years younger, and a really old cat named Phoebe. I grew. I learned to spell cat, to read little books. I continued to draw. I learned to watercolor. When I was 5, I discovered boys, which made my life a little more difficult, just a little, and a lot more interesting.
Rachel as an activist. But looking back, I recall in middle school, she led a lunchtime student walkout in solidarity with teachers lobbying for smaller class sizes and contacted the local newspaper trying to get coverage. 1991.
Dear soldier, I guess I don't really understand the world because I don't see why you aren't here. Why people can't make compromises. Why peace is still a vision and war is our near reality. I know I'm just a little sixth grader who writes poetry and worries about grades and makeup. But I also worry about bigger things. I worry about the whales dying, about the ozone layer depleting, about the trees being cut down. There are 1,000 things that echo through my mind when I think about this planet. Peace and cooperation are at the front of my mind.
She grew up in a small house, wedged between Puget Sound and the Black Hills of Washington State. We had 2 acres, mostly gone to blackberries, but enough room for chickens and fruit trees and some summers a vegetable garden.
Over the fence, by an old rusty rail, came the whispery twitch of a cream-colored tail. Over the fence, by a big haystack, came the pat of a paw, soft and black. Over the fence, by the tallest grass, came the twitch of a whisker, shiny as glass.
From earliest childhood, Rachel was immersed in words, rhymes, stories, songs, and thought.
The ice has been creeping into the puddles with cold, jutting hands. As I walk across the grass in my yard each morning, it crunches from the stiffness of the frost. The sky is a canvas stretched gray from one edge of the hills to the horizons. It is spattered with circling white seagulls, glaring down with beady eyes onto the earth. There is such beauty in the way the gulls turn their wings and soar in turning tranquility.
Rachel worked hard at her craft from an early age. When she was 10, a friend of mine asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up.
I am a poet.
Words were sacred to Rachel. 2 of Rachel's early utterances are enshrined in family lore. At a playground in Olympia when she was just over 2, she walked with her grandmother away from the wooden climbers toward Capitol Lake, and as she walked, she opened her arms and announced,
"This is the wide world, and I'm coming to it."
Her grandmother found this pronouncement extraordinary. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Rachel was making a literary allusion to the children's book, Grover and the Everything in the Whole Wide World. A few months later, Rachel asked her mother,
Is brave part of growing up?
I don't remember the context of the question, but in hindsight, it serves as a kind of measuring stick, a metaphorical stand-in for the marks we'd make on the door at our extended family's Minnesota lake cabin each summer to record each child's growth. When I read Rachel's writing now, I am struck by her determination to hang on to the wonderment of her childhood as she reached for the brave of becoming an adult.
I write because in some secret compartment in my brain, this little ironclad woman keeps screaming, "It's all you have!" It swallows me, ego and all, in one enormous gulp. I don't write letters. I write disjointed chapters in my unending epic. The muse. The muse. She climbs into your body and moves your puppet limbs and eases the words loose from the walls of your soul. I feel like I have been performing my whole life in this huge auditorium. But once in a while the house lights go up and I realize I have no audience. Nothing but hollow rows of folding chairs, and I don't care. I write it down because instinct tells me so. Writing is brave. It is the only brave thing about me.
In high school, Rachel sat at Safeway on cold, dark, rainy evenings collecting food for the Olympia Food Bank. During her college years, she advocated for the labor center at Evergreen when it was threatened with budget cuts, and spent a night sleeping in Olympia's tent city out of response to her concerns for the homeless. Her word as a 10-year-old. These are the forgotten ones. They are lost in the invisible world of lists. Here are our ugly siblings, the ones who stand behind us and smile hungrily. These are the ones we don't even glance at.
We fix our eyes just over their shoulders. Bring on their hungry smiles. We battle them with loose change, trying to send them back out of our minds. Here are the homeless and also the nameless. Here are the ones whom we politely ignore. Even when they speak to us, call to us, beseech us, we do not answer or call back. These are our brothers and sisters, and that is what terrifies us. They are us, and we could as easily be them.
As a child, I remember Rachel would pull on a billowy pink dress-up outfit, don a floppy blue hat, and dramatize the original tales swirling in her head. 13 years old.
When I am an old woman, I will stop trying to look beautiful. I will stop wearing makeup and buying uncomfortable clothes just because they look good. Maybe I'll take up nudism. I will dance and play basketball and replenish my stock of Crayolas. And I will write stories and they will be good. Because by that time, I'll have real stories to tell, and I won't be just a sack of words. When I am an old woman, I will leave my clothes on the floor, if I wear any, and make somebody else do the laundry. I will take up karate and learn how to flamenco dance, and I will race my grandchildren and beat them, and I'll get a cow and put it in the backyard, and a motorcycle and some leather pants.
Rachel shared our home with exchange students. Gustavo, Anyuta, and Seiko lived with us during Rachel's high school years. In 1995, after Anyuta spent 3 months with us, a 15-year-old Rachel returned with her to the eastern Russian city of Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk and spent 6 weeks with Anyuta's family.
I live better here than I do in the U.S., so don't worry about anything. Sorry if that's insulting, but you guys just don't treat me like an honored guest. I told Anyuta I'm going to tie her to a chair tomorrow so that she'll let me do the dishes. I love you, Rachel.
In Russia, Rachel found people full of generosity, eager to share their lives.
Russia. It wakes me in the middle of the night and takes the air out of my lungs and squeezes tears out onto my cheek for no apparent reason. How do I write it down? How do I write about Russia? Before this trip, I had spent my entire life with the same people. There are good things about my life in America. A house, a bedroom of my own, recycling bins, teachers who are my friends, cars with seatbelts in back. But there are aspects that make me shudder. Supermarkets, malls, Slim Fast commercials, our grotesque, gigantic homes, our lack of reverence for other cultures. Russia is heaven. Well, except if you're Russian. Russia is hell for its people, but they love it and they're proud of it anyway. They make you love it with their warmth and their cheer. Olympia is warm and safe and happy. It is my love. Yuzhno Russia is my passion.
$1998.
I was 19. I was walking in Top Foods in the meat section, and all I could think about was this article I read about the infrastructure in Moscow. The city is heated with boiling water flowing through underground pipes.
Yeah, because of the economic depression in Russia, the pipes couldn't be repaired. So the pipes burst and sections of soil become saturated with boiling water.
People, little children, walking along the sidewalks in Moscow fall into sinkholes and die in boiling water. I was crying in Top Foods, carrying around this image of boiling to death.
And the whole opulent array of Top Foods seemed like a big pink bow on the head of everything that is unjust and frivolous and neglectful about those of us with power and money. And it made me sick to my stomach to think about how self-satisfied I was that morning at having written a nice little poem about raindrops and cedar trees. And then there was Rachel, the humorist. An email addressed to me, subject, "Because I don't love you anymore." Since you deserted us, I found a new dad who never complains when I borrow his clothes, and stocks the refrigerator with beer for me and my hoodlum friends, and bought me a Ferrari and my own chauffeur so I never have to get my driver's license, and lets me make life-size dinosaur sculptures in the yard. That is why I never write you.
Actually, Dad, that was just a little joke. But I do think I should fill you in on some sketchy things that have been going on up here. Don't tell Mom who tipped you off, but the mailman's been coming by a lot more than usual and staying for a real long time and wearing really racy, high-cut mailman shorts. And Mom's been dressing really trampy. I just thought you should know. Your loving daughter, Rachel.
She wrote that after I left Olympia on a job that took me to the Cayman Islands.
Lately, I've been thinking about writing about my mother, Cindy Corrie. We have a very involved mother, overly involved sometimes, which means we have to claw our way towards autonomy, kick and scream to get some space to grow in. Sometimes, my mother is so big, she's like a Macy's parade balloon. Sometimes, my mother is so big she looms over everything. You know I scare you, Mom. I'm sorry I scare you, but I want to write and I want to see. And what would I write about if I only stayed within the doll's house, the flower world I grew up in? You gave me potential. I love you, but I'm growing out of what you gave me. I'm saving it inside me and growing outwards. Let me fight my monsters.
September 11th attack on the United States, Rachel began to work with local peace groups, including the Olympia Movement for Justice and Peace, Olympians for Peace in the Middle East, and students educating students about the Middle East. She was drawn to Palestine and Israel by people in Olympia, by an Israeli woman whose family members had survived the Holocaust and who'd become a powerful voice against the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands.
People were offering themselves up as human shields in Palestine, and I was spending all my time making dove costumes and giant peace puppets.
Rachel studied the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and began to learn Arabic. She rearranged her life to finance her own trip to Palestine. January 19th, 2003.
Hey, Mom, could you please email me anyone you can think of that it'd be good to contact if I were to get into trouble? Not that I'm planning on it. Just friends or family who would call their congresspeople, etc. I'm going to give the Olympian your number. Please, think about your language before you talk to them. I think it was smart of you to be wary about using the word terrorism. And if you talk about the cycle of violence or eye for an eye, you could be perpetuating the idea that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a balanced conflict, instead of a largely unarmed people against the fourth most powerful military in the world. The scariest thing for non-Jewish Americans in talking about Palestinian self-determination is the fear of being or sounding anti-Semitic. Reading Chomsky's book and talking to my non-Zionist Jewish friends has helped me to think about this. Mostly, I just think we all have a right to be critical of government policies, any government policies, particularly government policies that we are funding. It is important to recognize that the people of Israel are suffering too, and that Jewish people have a long history of oppression, which we, as U.S. citizens and non-Jews, still have some responsibility for. It is also extraordinarily important that we draw a firm distinction between the policies of Israel as a state and Jewish people. Now, that's a no-brainer, but there is very strong pressure to conflate the two. Thus, the pro-Israel lobby becomes the Jewish lobby, and criticism of Israel becomes anti-Semitic. I try to ask myself, whose interest does it serve to identify Israeli policy with all Jewish people? These kind of things I just think about all the time, and my ideas evolve. I'm really new to talking about Israel-Palestine, so I don't always know the political implications of my words.
Values. Don't judge other people. Have compassion. Understand that I have limited experience and limited perspective, and be grateful for people who challenge that perspective. Try to act out of love, not anger or ego, especially with political stuff. Respect the earth and always work to improve my relationship to the earth. Try to be honest. Try to act in solidarity with people who are marginalized. Try not to profit from injustices. Do not accept personal victory in competition with people in which I am given unfair advantages. Depend on myself as much as possible. Talk openly with my parents about who I am, realistically. (1992) What I am afraid of.
Bad grades.
Growing up and being mediocre.
Heights.
Being alone. Things outside.
My cat dying.
Falling, tumbling, rolling down. Being out of control. Pain.
getting varicose veins, cellulite.
Wrinkles, other people being disappointed in me.
I'm afraid of being mauled by something.
Being permanently in one routine or one spot.
I'm afraid that I'll hit my kid someday.
Or hurt someone I love.
I'm afraid of being poor.
I'm afraid of drowning, falling, pain.
I'm afraid of failure, embarrassment, disappointment, hope. I'm afraid of blind, ludicrous, idealistic hope. And I'm afraid of people knowing how bad I am.
As she packed her bags for Palestine, I called her on the phone. Rachel, you know you don't have to go. No one will blame you if you don't.
I know. And I'm really scared. But I think I can do this. And I know I have to try.
As much as I wished for my daughter to stay in Olympia, I could not ask her to be something less than she could be.
We are all born, and someday we'll all die, most likely to some degree alone. What if our aloneness isn't a tragedy? What if our aloneness is what allows us to speak the truth without being afraid? What if our aloneness is what allows us to adventure, to experience the world as a dynamic presence, as a changeable, interactive thing? If I lived in Bosnia or Rwanda, needless death wouldn't be a distant symbol to me. It wouldn't be a metaphor. It would be reality. This realization that I will live my life in a world where I have privileges. I can't cool boiling waters in Russia. I can't be Picasso. I can't be Jesus. I can't be Jesus. I can't save the planet single-handedly. I can wash dishes.
On January 25th, 2003, Rachel made her way to Israel.
Very little problem at the airport. My tight jeans and cropped bunny hair sweater seem to have made all of the difference. And of course, the use of my Israeli friend's address.
In Jerusalem, Rachel started training with the ISM, the International Solidarity Movement, a Palestinian-led human rights and nonviolent resistance group with participants, international participants of all ages.
January 27th, 2003. An attack in Gaza the night before last killed 14 and injured around 30. The West Bank and Gaza are under extreme strict curfew until after the election tomorrow. You are not allowed to leave your house at all. Not for food, nothing. I am still in Jerusalem trying to prevent the demolition of civilian homes. I am relatively sheltered here. Walking around with Palestinians, I wait while they are stopped to show ID. Blue stars of David are spray painted on doors in the Arab section of the old city. I have never seen that symbol used in quite that way before. I'm used to seeing the cross used in a colonialist way. I know this is something I can't really understand right now. The curfews, the reality of the checkpoints. I am embarrassed at how long it's taking me to realize in my gut that people live like this.
ISM was formed after the U.S. and Israeli governments rejected a proposal by Mary Robinson, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, to send international human rights monitors to the region.
Notes from training. When talking, no hearsay. Call hospitals and official sources. Use quotes. Don't appear to judge rightness or wrongness. Non-violence. Don't touch those we're confronting. Don't run. Carry nothing that could be used as a weapon. No self-initiating actions.
When Rachel arrived in Rafah, she entered a world of tanks, bulldozers, sniper towers, and checkpoints. A world of smashed greenhouses and demolished homes and a giant steel wall being constructed on the rubble near the border with Egypt.
Oh, Rafah. Aching homes of Rafah. Homes constructed over a lifetime and unraveled in the night. Aches of rubble and weedy rebar craning out of concrete boulders. Ache of ghost homes, looming without volume, without mass. Straddling this wall and this wasteland the wall demands. Baby. Grandmother. Small girl curling her entire small hand around one big finger. Teenage boy with teenage boy legs and teenage boy laugh, ejected into rubble and homelessness and scattered if not killed. Oh, Rafah, aching Rafah. I am in Rafah, a city of about 140,000 people. Rafah existed before 1948, but most of the people here are people who were relocated here from their homes in historic Palestine, now Israel. Currently, the Israeli army is building a 14-meter high wall and carving a no-man's land along the houses in the border. 602 homes have been completely bulldozed, according to the Rafah Popular Committee. The number of homes that have been partially demolished is even greater. In the second grade, there were classroom rules hanging from the ceiling. The only one I can think of right now seems like it would be a pretty good rule for life. Everyone must feel safe. Safe to be themselves, physically safe. Safe to say what they think. Just safe. That's the best rule I can think of. Sleep in tent. Gunshot through tent. Start smoking.
In Rafah, Rachel stayed with families as they struggled day to day.
The two front rooms of the Nasrallah house are unusable because gunshots have been fired through the walls. So the whole family, 3 kids and 2 parents, sleep in the parents' bedroom. I sleep on the floor next to the youngest daughter, Imam, and we all share blankets.
February 7, 2003.
I have been in Palestine for 2 weeks and 1 hour now, and I still have very few words to describe what I see. It is most difficult for me to think about what's going on here when I sit down to write back to the United States. Something about the portal into luxury. I don't know if many of the children here have ever existed without tank shell holes in their walls and the towers of an occupying army surveying them from the near horizons. Nevertheless, I think about the fact that no amount of reading, attendance at conferences, documentary viewing, or word of mouth could have prepared me for the reality of the situation here. You just can't imagine it unless you see it.
And as she entered this world, Rachel brought us with her through her phone calls and email.
Thanks everyone for your encouragement, questions, criticism. Daniel's response was particularly inspiring to me, and it deserves to be shared.
To Rachel Corrie, subject, thank you. My name is Daniel Dworsky. I am Reserve First Sergeant in the Israeli Defense Forces, ID BDRCK 229771.
The military prisons are filling up with conscientious objectors. Many of them are reservists with families. Some have been in jail for more than 6 months. These are men who have proven their courage under fire in the past, who are refusing to carry out orders that involve firing on targets where civilians may be harmed. In a time now in Israel where jobs are scarce and people are losing their homes and businesses to Sharon's vendetta, many career soldiers, among them pilots and intelligence personnel, have chosen jail and unemployment over what they could only describe as murder.
Men reading fashion magazine. Oh, what a world it seems we live in, straight men. Oh, what a world we live in.
I am supposed to report to the Military Justice Department. It is my job to hunt down runaway soldiers and bring them in. I have not reported in for 18 months. Instead, I've been using my credentials to document on film and see with my own eyes what ISMers and other internationals have claimed my boys have been up to. I love my country. I believe that Israel is under the leadership of some very bad people right now. They are an embarrassment to 40% of the Israeli public, and they would be an embarrassment to 90% of the population if they knew what we know.
Always traveling, but not in love.
Please
Still
document as much as you can, and do not embellish anything with creative writing. The media here serves as a very convincing spin control agent through all of this. Pass this letter on to your friends. There are many soldiers among the ranks of those serving the occupied territories that are sickened by what they see. Do not make the mistake of objectifying soldiers as they have objectified you. Respect is catchy, as is disrespect, whether either be deserved or not. You are doing a good thing. I thank you for it. Peace. Danny.
February 27, 2003. Mama, love you, really miss you. I have bad nightmares about tanks and bulldozers outside our house and you and me inside. I am really scared for the people here. Yesterday, I watched a father lead his 2 tiny children, holding his hands, out into the sight of tanks and a sniper tower and bulldozers because he thought his house was going to be exploded. It was our mistaken translation that caused him to think this, although I'm sure it's only a matter of time. This is in the area where Sunday, about 150 men were rounded up outside the settlement with gunfire over their heads, while tanks and bulldozers destroyed 25 greenhouses, the livelihoods of 300 people. I was really scared that this man and his kids were all going to be shot, and I tried to stand between them and the tank.
I thought a lot about what you said on the phone, about Palestinian violence not helping the situation. 60,000 people from Rafah worked in Israel 2 years ago. Now, only 600 can go there for jobs. These 600 must endure 3 checkpoints, and for them a 40-minute drive can become a 12-hour or impassable journey. Sources of economic growth are all completely destroyed. The airport, closed. The border for trade with Egypt now with a sniper tower in the middle of the crossing. access to the ocean completely cut off in the last 2 years. We get reports that in the past, Gazan flower shipments to Europe were delayed for 2 weeks for security inspections. You can imagine the value of 2-week-old cut flowers, so that market dried up. And then the bulldozers come and take out vegetable farms and gardens. The vast majority of people here, even if they had the economic means to escape, even if they actually wanted to give up resisting on their land and just leave, can't leave because they can't even get into Israel to apply for visas, and because their destination countries won't let them in. What is left for people? Tell me if you can think of anything, because I can't. So when someone says that any act of Palestinian violence justifies Israel's actions, not only do I question that logic in light of international law and the right of people to legitimate armed struggle in defense of their land and their families, not only do I question that logic in light of the 4th Geneva Convention, which prohibits collective punishment, prohibits the transfer of an occupying country's population into an occupied area, prohibits the expropriation of water resources and the destruction of civilian infrastructure such as farms. Not only do I question that logic in light of the notion that 50-year-old Russian guns and homemade explosives can have any impact on the activities of one of the world's largest militaries, backed by the world's only superpower. I also question that logic on the basis of common sense. If any of us had our lives and welfares completely strangled and lived with children in a shrinking place where we knew that soldiers and tanks and bulldozers could come for us at any moment, and our houses demolished, if they came and destroyed all the greenhouses, do you not think, in a similar situation, most people would defend themselves as best they could? You asked me about nonviolent resistance. The vast majority of Palestinians right now are engaging in Gandhian nonviolent resistance.
Who do you think these families are that I tell you about, who won't take any money from us, even though they are very, very poor? And who say to us, we are not a hotel. We help you because we think maybe you will go and tell people that you lived with Muslims, that we are good people. We are quiet people, we just want peace. When that explosive detonated yesterday, it broke all the windows in this family's house. I was in the process of being served tea and playing with 2 small babies.
Do you think I'm hanging out with Hamas fighters? This has to stop. I think it is a good idea that we all drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop. I don't think it's an extremist thing to do anymore. I still really want to dance around to Pat Benatar and have boyfriends and make comics for my coworkers, but I also want this to stop. I am disappointed that this is the reality of the world in which we live in, and that we, in fact, participate in it.
I'm beginning to question my fundamental belief in the goodness of human nature. This is not at all what I asked for when I came into this world. This is not at all what the people here asked for when they came into this world. This is not what they are asking for now. This is not the world you and Dad wanted me to come into when you decided to have me. This is not what I meant when I was 2 and looked at Capitol Lake and said,
This is the wide world, and I'm coming to it. When I come back from Palestine, I probably will have nightmares and constantly feel guilty for not being here. But I can channel that into more work. Coming here is one of the better things I have ever done. I love you. And Dad, sorry for the diatribe. Okay, some really strange men are offering me some peas, so I need to eat them and thank them.
I remember there was fear in her voice. When she called on the phone, you could hear shelling outside the house.
Hi, Papa. I feel like sometimes I spend all my time propagandizing Mom and assuming that she'll pass stuff on to you, so you get neglected. Don't worry about me. Right now I'm most concerned that we are not being effective. I still don't feel particularly at risk. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I leave here. One of our core members of our group has to leave tomorrow, and watching her say goodbye is making me realize how difficult it will be. People here can't leave, so that complicates things. And they're also pretty matter-of-fact about whether they'll be alive or not when we come back. Let me know if you have any ideas about what I should do with the rest of my life. If you want, you can write to me as if I was on vacation at a camp in Hawaii, learning how to weave. One thing I do to make things easier here is to utterly retreat into fantasies that I'm in a Hollywood movie or a sitcom starring Michael J. Fox. So feel free to make something up, and I'll be happy to play along. Much love, Poppy. Rachel.
I was across the parking lot doing laundry, and Cindy was cleaning our apartment late on a Sunday morning in March when the phone rang. It was our son-in-law, Kelly, and he asked Cindy if he could speak to me. Detecting something ominous in Kelly's voice, she asked him, "Is something wrong?" Kelly hesitated. "I'm afraid we've had some very sad news." And it was only then that Cindy could hear our daughter Sarah sobbing in the background. Sarah and Kelly had seen scrolling at the bottom of their television screen, "Olympia woman killed in Rafah, Gaza." Rachel was killed on March 16, 2003, in Rafah, in the Gaza Strip, when she was crushed to death under an armored Caterpillar D9R bulldozer operated by members of the Israeli Defense Forces. Rachel had been protecting the Nasrallah family home, the family she'd stayed with and had come to know, and who she knew were inside the house as the bulldozer approached it. At 5 p.m. approximately, she positioned herself between the home and the D9. From eyewitness accounts, we know that her actions taken were the same as those taken by other ISM activists. Bulldozers have pushed one activist over a barbed wire fence, pinned another against a wall. In both instances, the bulldozer had stopped in time. But on this run, the bulldozer did not stop. Witnesses state that as the D9 pushed Earth forward, Rachel managed to climb up the mound to avoid being engulfed by it. They state that she was high enough to see directly into the cab. But as it continued to advance, she lost her footing and was pulled under the blade. The bulldozer continued forward until its cab was over Rachel, and then backed up, revealing her crushed body.
Now I'm in middle school. I guess I've grown up a little. It's all relative anyway. 9 years is as long as 40 years, depending on how long you've lived. I stole that from my dad. Sometimes I think my dad is the wisest person in the world. But you understand, none of this is really true, because what I wrote today is true, but you'll read it tomorrow or the next day, and my whole life will be different. Is that how life is? A new draft for every day? A new view for each hour?
Rachel, I find writing to you hard, but not thinking about you impossible. So I don't write, but I do bore my friends at lunch, giving vent to my fear. I am afraid for you, and I think I have reason to be. But I'm also proud of you. Very proud. You may say, have said, that it is wrong for me to stick my head in the sand. But I say, I am only trying, or just wishing I could, stick your head in the sand, and that's different. Hardwired. Can't be changed on that aspect of the issue. Love you. Be safe. Papa.
Fashion magazine. Heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major.